You see, most men believe that the ultimate revenge after heartbreak is no contact. They wait, they disappear, they hope she'll notice. But here's the reality. Silence only works if you upgrade yourself in the shadows. No contact by itself is like locking yourself in a room. It changes nothing about you. What actually hurts her ego is when she realizes you've become a stronger, more attractive, more in-demand man without her. Most men hear about the no contact rule and think that's the magic solution. They believe that if they just cut her off, if they disappear, somehow she will be sitting in her room thinking about them non-stop, regretting the breakup, and eventually coming back begging. But let's be brutally honest here. No contact on its own doesn't guarantee anything. In fact, for many women, it brings them a strange sense of relief. They think, finally, he's not chasing me anymore. Finally, I don't have to feel guilty about ignoring his texts. That's why simply going silent is not enough. The real power of no contact is not in the absence. It's in what you do with that absence. This is where self-elevation comes into play. If you cut her off, but remain the same man, same mindset, same habits, same appearance, then you haven't changed anything about the equation. She already detached herself from that version of you. Why would she miss it? Why would her ego feel threatened if the same man she walked away from is still waiting in the shadows? No, the real transformation begins when you use that space, that silence, as fuel to build yourself into someone completely different, into someone who forces her to rethink everything she believed about you. Think about it. When you're constantly reaching out, checking in, or even stalking her on social media, all of your energy is still orbiting around her. That is the opposite of power. But when you go silent, not as a tactic, but as a choice to redirect every ounce of your focus inward, that is when you start becoming dangerous to her ego. You shift the spotlight back on yourself. You stop asking, what is she doing? And instead start asking, what can I become? And that question is where growth starts. Self-elevation is not just about hitting the gym, though that's a massive part of it. It's about reshaping your entire identity. Physically, yes, you train your body, you take care of your appearance, you present yourself as a man who respects himself enough to look sharp, eat well, and carry himself with strength. But beyond that, it's about leveling up mentally and emotionally. It's about building skills you always postponed, learning things that expand your mind, working on your finances so you're not just surviving, you're thriving. When you step into this phase, the no contact period stops being about her at all. It becomes about you. And here's the irony. When she sees nothing from you, when your silence is paired with undeniable growth, that is when her ego starts to bleed, because it's no longer just, he's not contacting me. Now it becomes, he's not contacting me, and he's becoming better without me. He's evolving, he's upgrading, he's moving into a version of himself that looks harder to reach, harder to replace. That's when the regret begins to creep into her mind. But here's the part most men miss. Women notice details. They pay attention to the energy you give off. Even if you're not posting anything online, people talk, word spreads. A mutual friend might mention how well you're doing, or she might stumble upon a picture you didn't even mean for her to see. And suddenly the silence combined with visible self-elevation tells her the story she never expected. You didn't just go quiet, you outgrew her. This is the secret behind why no contact works for some men and fails miserably for others. The ones who sit in silence but stay stuck in the same habits, same pain, same emotional state, they gain nothing. But the men who use silence as a cocoon, as a transformation chamber, as the period where they build an entirely new version of themselves, those are the men who crush her ego without ever saying a word. Because nothing bruises the ego more than realizing that someone you thought you had figured out, someone you thought you could walk away from, has turned into someone you can no longer even reach. One of the biggest mistakes men make after a breakup or rejection is confusing indifference with bitterness. They think they're showing strength by throwing shade, posting cryptic quotes, or pretending to not care while secretly watching her every move. But let me tell you something very clearly. Bitterness is still an attachment. It is still energy directed at her. Every time you post a line about betrayal, every time you complain to mutual friends, every time you stalk her social media just to see who she's talking to, you are feeding her ego. She knows you are still affected. She knows you are still emotionally invested. And when she knows that, she has no reason to feel regret, no reason to question herself, because you are proving that she still matters more than you want to admit. Indifference, on the other hand, is a completely different energy. Indifference is not pretending you don't care. It is truly reaching a place where her existence, her actions, her opinions no longer control your emotional state. It is when you stop responding, not because you're trying to make her chase, but because you genuinely have better things to do with your time. Indifference doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't need to perform. It simply radiates power because it shows that your center of gravity has shifted away from her. Think about it. When you're bitter, you are still in reaction mode. You react to her posts, you react to her silence, you react to her new relationship, you react to everything. And when you're in reaction mode, you are showing her that she still has power over you. But when you are indifferent, you stop reacting altogether. Her posts don't trigger you. Her silence doesn't bother you. Her attempts to show off or make you jealous fall flat because you are not watching, not caring, not investing a single ounce of energy into decoding her behavior. That's when the ego crushing begins, because a woman's ego thrives on knowing she can affect you. When she realizes she no longer can, the illusion of her control starts to collapse. And let's be real here. Women are incredibly perceptive. They can tell the difference between a man who is faking indifference and a man who has actually detached. If you are forcing yourself to act strong, but deep down you're obsessed, it will show. Maybe not directly, but in small ways. In the way you suddenly disappear and reappear. In the way you overcompensate with flashy posts or exaggerated confidence. That's not indifference. That's theater. Real indifference is quiet. It doesn't need to announce itself. It shows in the fact that your life is moving forward with or without her acknowledgement. Bitterness screams, I'm hurt and I want you to notice. Indifference whispers, I don't need you anymore. And the whisper is far more powerful, because what truly unsettles someone is not that you are angry, not that you are trying to get back at them. What unsettles them is when they realize you feel nothing. Love and hate are both forms of attention. Indifference is the absence of it. It's the void. And human egos hate the void because it means they no longer occupy space in your world. To show indifference, you must first build it internally. That means doing the inner work of detaching emotionally. You stop asking questions like, what is she thinking? Does she miss me? Is she seeing someone else? And you start asking, why am I still letting her take up rent in my head when she has no place in my future? You train yourself to redirect those thoughts into your goals, your fitness, your friendships, your growth. Over time, you reprogram your mind so that she is no longer the focal point of your life. And here's the most fascinating part. Indifference often triggers a stronger reaction from her than bitterness ever could. When you're bitter, she feels validated. She sees that you're hurt, and that gives her power. But when you're indifferent, she feels confused. She wonders, how did he let go so easily? How is he not affected? Did I really mean that little to him? Or did he simply rise so high that I no longer matter? That confusion eats away at her ego more than any angry post or sarcastic remark ever could. If there is one thing that crushes a woman's ego more than silence, it's social proof. And let me explain exactly why. A woman may leave you. She may reject you. She may even convince herself that you weren't good enough for her. But nothing stabs her ego deeper than realizing other people, especially other women, see value in you. Because at the root of it all, social proof is about one undeniable truth. Humans desire what others desire. When other people are drawn to you, when you are admired, respected, and wanted by others, it forces her to question her own decision. Suddenly, it's not just her opinion of you that exists. It's the collective validation from the world around you, and that validation shatters the comfort she had in walking away. You see, silence is private, but social proof is public. She can ignore your no contact. She can convince herself you're probably miserable without her. But when she sees you laughing in a group, attending events, surrounded by friends, or even catching the attention of women who look like they're enjoying your company, she can't deny that reality. Social proof puts her ego in a corner because it tells her, you are not the authority on his worth. The world has already validated him. That's the kind of realization that eats away at her sense of importance. And here's the mistake most men make. They think showing social proof means trying to prove something directly to her. That's not the point. Social proof is powerful only when it's organic. If you're posting forced pictures with women just to trigger jealousy, she will sense the performance. And instead of crushing her ego, you will look desperate. The power of social proof comes from you naturally being in demand. It comes from you building a lifestyle where people want to be around you, where your presence is magnetic, and where attention flows to you without you chasing it. That is when she realizes painfully that you're not just surviving without her. You're thriving in a way that others recognize and admire. Think about it from her perspective. She walked away believing you would sit in silence, maybe miss her, maybe chase her. She thought she could move on easily while you were stuck. But then she sees evidence that your life didn't just move on, it expanded. You're meeting new people, you're connecting, you're in circles she doesn't have access to anymore. And the ultimate dagger to her ego, when other women are showing interest in you, giving you the kind of admiration she used to take for granted. Nothing breaks the illusion of superiority faster than realizing the man she discarded is now being celebrated by others. Social proof doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't mean bragging or flaunting. In fact, the subtler it is, the sharper it cuts. A simple photo at a gathering, a natural smile while you're surrounded by friends, a story where you're out living life fully. All of these things tell a story louder than words ever could. They say, he doesn't need me. He has a world that accepts him, values him, and maybe even adores him more than I ever did. That narrative shakes her ego because it forces her to confront the possibility that she underestimated your worth. What makes social proof so devastating is that it plays directly into human psychology. No longer has you in the palm of her hand. And the more you commit to building a life that naturally makes you harder to access, the more powerful this scarcity effect becomes. Scarcity also creates curiosity. Human nature always chases what it cannot easily have. When you are constantly around, There is no mystery, no intrigue, no pull. But when you disappear into your own world, when your time is limited, when your energy is reserved only for things that matter, you become unpredictable, and unpredictability breeds attraction. She starts to wonder where you are, who you are with, what you are doing. That wondering is what unsettles her ego, because it forces her to realize that she is no longer the center of your life. But here's the key. Scarcity is not about withdrawing from everyone. It's not about isolating yourself. It's about being selective with your energy. It's about showing that your presence is valuable, that not everyone has the privilege of accessing your time and attention. This applies not just to her, but to everyone in your life. When people begin to see that you are a man with boundaries, a man who doesn't waste his time, a man who chooses carefully where his energy flows, your social value skyrockets. And when she observes this shift, whether directly or indirectly, her ego takes the hit because she realizes she no longer has the guaranteed access she once took for granted. Another layer of scarcity is emotional scarcity. It's not just about not being physically available. It's about not being emotionally available to her anymore. That means she no longer gets the comfort of knowing you still care deeply, still think about her, still crave her attention. Emotional scarcity means she no longer gets to feed off the validation you use to give so freely. And when that supply is cut off, her ego starves. The irony is that scarcity makes you more desirable even outside of her perspective. When you are not always available, when you are focused on your growth, your work, your passions, people respect you more. Other women notice. Friends notice. The world begins to see you as someone who is valued, someone who is wanted, someone whose time is precious. And when that perception builds, the contrast between who you were when she had you and who you are now becomes painful for her ego to digest. Scarcity is not created by ignoring her. It is created by elevating your life to a point where ignoring her is not even intentional. It's simply a byproduct of you being consumed by bigger, better things. That is the type of scarcity that cuts deepest because it cannot be faked. One of the biggest illusions men fall into after a breakup is believing that walking away physically is the same thing as moving on emotionally. They stop calling, they stop texting, they block her on social media, and they convince themselves that this is strength. But deep down, they are still chained to her. They still replay old memories at night. They still stalk her from fake accounts. They still fantasize about her coming back. And this is why so many men never truly heal. Physical distance without emotional detachment is like locking the door but leaving the windows wide open. You are technically gone, but she still has access to your mind, your emotions, your energy. You have to understand, real power is not in cutting communication. It's in cutting the invisible strings that still tie you to her. Because as long as you are emotionally invested, she controls you. She doesn't even have to do anything. You can go no contact for 6 months, but if in month 7 she texts you, "Hey, I miss you," and your heart skips a beat, then all that time meant nothing. You were physically absent, but emotionally available the entire time. That is not freedom. That is self-deception. Emotional detachment begins with reclaiming your inner space. Right now, if you're constantly thinking about her, what she's doing, who she's with, whether she misses you, then she is still occupying your mental real estate for free. You've made her the center of your internal world, even though she's no longer part of your external one. Detachment means taking her out of that position. It means refusing to allow your emotions to be dictated by her choices. It means saying to yourself, I no longer allow her to have the power to shift my moods, my focus, my direction. That mindset shift is the real liberation because it takes back what you unknowingly handed over, your emotional sovereignty. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. It doesn't mean pretending you don't care when deep down you do. Suppression always backfires because the more you try to bury feelings, the more they resurface at unexpected moments. Emotional detachment comes not from denial, but from acceptance. You face the pain, you process the loss, you acknowledge the hurt, but then you consciously choose not to feed it anymore. You stop rehearsing the same stories in your head. You stop giving attention to the what ifs and maybes. You recognize that every time you revisit those thoughts, you are keeping the wound alive. And once you stop feeding it, it begins to heal. The moment you detach emotionally, you begin to see things clearly. The fog lifts. You realize she was not the perfect angel your mind made her out to be. You remember the flaws, the incompatibilities, the red flags you ignored when you were blinded by attachment. Emotional detachment strips away the illusion and replaces it with clarity. And clarity is what allows you to stop obsessing and start moving forward with strength. And here's the thing, emotional detachment doesn't just protect you, it punishes her ego in silence. Because a woman can sense when you are still emotionally tied to her, even if you're physically distant. She can feel when you're still longing, still hoping, still waiting. That validation feeds her. But when she feels nothing, when she realizes her texts no longer make your heart race, when she notices you don't react to her games, when she senses she no longer has access to your emotions, that is when her ego takes the deepest hit. Because losing your physical presence is one thing, but losing your emotional investment means she has truly lost her grip. Emotional detachment also gives you the space to redirect that energy back into yourself. All the time and thought you used to waste on her, you now channel into your growth. You rebuild your confidence, you strengthen your purpose, you sharpen your mind. And as you do this, the emotional grip loosens more and more until one day you realize she doesn't even cross your mind the way she used to. That is when you know you've truly detached, because at that point, you are no longer carrying her in your heart. You are carrying yourself. There is nothing more devastating to a woman's ego than believing she had you at your lowest and then witnessing you reappear in her world as a completely upgraded version of yourself. Most men make the mistake of rushing to re-engage too soon. They go no contact for a few weeks, maybe a month, and then show up exactly the same as before. Same habits, same body, same energy, same insecurities. And when she sees that, her ego feels validated because it confirms her decision to leave. It tells her, I didn't lose anything. He's still the man I walked away from. That is why reappearing too early is one of the biggest traps men fall into. If you truly want to crush her ego, you must disappear long enough to rebuild yourself into someone entirely unrecognizable compared to the version she discarded. Reappearing as an upgrade is not just about external changes, although those matter. Yes, you should work on your physique. Yes, you should refine your style. Yes, you should elevate your appearance in a way that instantly signals discipline and self-respect.